Should I start?
Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Google Hangout. Are you really listening? And this is an opportunity to share some proven techniques on how to better listen to, connect with, and really gain the trust of young people in your community. So thanks for joining us. I'm Tanya Tucker, Vice President of Alliance Engagement here at America's Promise Alliance. And so happy to be joined today by Craig McClay, and Craig is Youth Engagement Advisor for America's Promise Alliance's Center for Promise at Tufts University. And Craig is one of the lead interviewers for our report, Don't Call Them Dropouts. So thanks for being with us, Craig. And joining Craig today is Javion Eartha, who's a 21-year-old young woman from Roxbury, Massachusetts. Yay, Roxbury, Boston, my hometown. Shout out to the hometown homie. Thanks for joining us, Javion. And so, I'm happy that you all joined us today. We really want to make this as interactive a session as possible. So you should have a Q&A button on your screen. Please click on that and give us your questions throughout the presentation. We want to make sure that we stop and pause and meet your needs. So we'll be answering questions throughout. So please feel free to click on that button and submit questions throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure that we respond to those. Okay, so let's dive right in, shall we? So Craig, I want to start with you and get a little bit of background on you and what really motivates you to do this work. I mean, you obviously have a passion for this issue. So what makes you do the work you do?
Well, first of all, Tanya, I want to say thank you to you and America's Promise and the Center for Promise for this opportunity to share and to listen and learn myself. As for the reasons, the why of what I do, why I do what I do, well, I grew up in Louisiana, and I saw a lot of things going on in the family and the neighborhood where literally it was just matters of miscommunication or misunderstandings, and it led to like severe consequences. So fast forward, I moved to Boston back in '88, and I'm seeing the same thing at a much higher level. With people that are not as close to me, but it's still impacting me in ways that that didn't feel right. And so I got into the work with young people as just kind of like I'm trying different jobs, trying different fields, looking for kind of like what makes me feel alive and charged and energized. And the best feeling came from when I was working with young people, especially in group settings, just watching young people like literally, physically, and otherwise transforming right before my eyes. I got to see a side of young people, especially young people from urban areas, that most people don't get to see. Because life in those areas is difficult. People have to wear a lot of guards and masks to protect themselves and to be able to navigate that reality that they have. But I saw a different side of it, and I saw it in a way that actually made an impact. How when you touch someone's life and you see that magical light in them kind of light up, and that fire and that understanding and that connection. I saw that in the work that I was doing, and that's kind of a selfish reason, but I still really enjoyed that. And I mean, the other part of it is that one of the other jobs that I had kind of growing up was I was charged with hearing stories from elderly people. I was like 17 years old, and all I had to do, I had a recorder, a list of like 7 questions, and literally just listening to the richness and the diversity of the lived experience through the eyes of other people just really got me going. So between seeing the fire and the passion, and actually I authentically, genuinely enjoy hearing other people tell their life stories and share, and that really gets me going. And I also enjoy just kind of like I'm one of those people that's always got to keep moving and whatnot. So I like doing things, and getting out and talking to people is one great way to feed my fire. Also, see the fire come on someone else, and then kind of light the world up together.
That's wonderful. So why do you think youth voice is so important?
I think youth voice is very important because, again, kind of going back to the first question there, a lot of the stuff that I saw in my immediate spheres, I saw it as like just misunderstanding and miscommunication, and a lot of times young people are supposed, where I'm from in Louisiana, you know, young people are supposed to be seen and not heard, and it's actually counter to what we're trying to train young people to do later on in life. And having youth voice, I think that any issue that concerns young people directly needs that insight from young people. You know, you deal with domestic violence cases, you talk to people that have been domestically abused. You want to learn more about burn victims, you don't go and talk to, you know, lifeguards, you go and talk to people that have actually lived this experience, see what they're seeing, and then get them, encourage them to kind of come up with some from their perspective as to the things that should be done to address their needs in the best way that, you know, for them. And you do the same thing.
We work with one of our communities has a tagline for all the work that they do with and for young people, and it says, "Not about me, without me." So you know, I've always loved that tagline, and you know what you talked about really speaks to that.
Fantastic.
So, you know, so we have a lot of practitioners in communities leading programs, collaborative efforts, leading organizations, and who are really trying to connect with young people. So first, you know, how do they find young people, and particularly young people who we think, you know, aren't really the traditional leaders, may not be as engaged in programs and activities, if engaged at all? You know, how do you really seek out those young people to get those voices?
The first thing that I would suggest, you know, in the work that I've done is just getting out into the community. Just getting out, and if you have anything that you can post, handbills, flyers, things like that, go to places where young people, you know, will hang out and where young people go to, and just put that information around. I would say the second thing is when you're out in the community, talk to as many people as possible. You know, I like to connect with the local, you know, juvenile justice officer to see what they're going, who they're serving, and talk to them about what I'm doing, and say, hey, you know what, you know anybody that can fit into this? And sure enough, they recommend people. I also like to connect with the local church to see where they are, and if there's any possibility of building a bridge between what I'm doing and what the church is doing. I also like to hit the local stores where young people would go to buy clothes, buy candy, buy whatever it is. So, and you know, again, I'm not just throwing the flyer up there and saying, okay, thanks a lot, guy. I'm actually engaging the person behind the counter on the other side there, letting them know what I'm about, learning what they're about, and connecting with them, because they are the people that are going to bring them to you. You know, like I once heard someone say that, you know, in looking for a mentor, it's kind of hard to approach a person directly, but if you can approach someone around that person and then have that person kind of guide that person towards you, then it's a much stronger sell. So that's kind of like the approach that I use. I go to all the local agencies, all the people that I know, and I make it a point to be known by everybody as well, so that they know what it is that we're doing and ways that they can help support it. And you know, like 9 times out of 10, you talk to someone in the neighborhood, they know of a young person that could benefit from this program better than you would, and they actually have the power to actually kind of guide that person to you over, I mean, you're just Joe, you know what I mean? But this person is my uncle, this person is my brother, this person is my cousin. So that word of mouth, intimate or personal connection is very important to have. And then I think the last thing, just in terms of connecting with young people, is is I look to even the places where the likely suspects, you know, won't necessarily be. So I'll connect with the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, you know, the guy who's got a store that sells fish and tackle bait, and you know, and really spread the word as far as possible.
Right. So it may mean that our folks need to, you know, create some of those connections with unlikely partners than they have right now. So Javion, I want to turn to you a bit. Can you tell us, you know, how you met this character, and you know, what started your relationship here?
I actually met Craig. He was walking through my neighborhood giving out flyers and talking to people. And I actually didn't know. I was in the kitchen when he was talking to my mom, and he was like having this good old conversation. And I'm like, I didn't know that they had went to high school together. And he's like, you know, anyone has a job? And I heard him. I'm like, ooh, anyone has a job? But then she's like, oh, Javion, come outside. I came outside. He's like talking to me about how like he has this great opportunity for youth, and he's telling me a little bit about the job, and he wants me to go to the interviews. So when I had went, it was like a great opportunity to like find a job because I haven't had a job in a long time when it had happened.
Was there when you first met Craig, was there something about what he said, or was it how he said it? Was he, how he showed up at your door that made you, sort of open to trusting this guy?
He was like really close to my mom. Like my mom was like talking to him like that was her best friend for like a long time. So she's like, "Oh, go to the interview." I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go." So like he was like very talkative. Craig talks a lot. So I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna drive me right in." So when I went to interview, that's exactly what he did.
That's great. And obviously glad that you all are, still connected today. So I want to, we have a question from one of our viewers that I want to throw out to you guys. And both of you all can feel free to answer. But the question is, what do you do for a young person, grade 6, who sees no point in education?
It's a great question. It's a really good question. And my short answer is you got to inspire that young person. And you got to find a way to breathe life into their lungs, literally. And I think a great way to do that is through just expose them to different possibilities. Take a young person, like our brain lights up. We feel alive when certain things happen, right? So maybe taking that young person out of their normal experience, right? Taking them to a part of town, doing something completely different that they wouldn't do, and then just kind of opening up a conversation with them because now they're a little bit more open. I think another great way to kind of engage with this young person is to present them with a challenge. Like a very doable challenge, but also at the same time something that's not too easy where it's just a matter of like, I'm breathing and now all of a sudden I've achieved that. But it's got to be a little bit of a level of challenge in there, along with something that's kind of like brand new. And I also feel that it's one of those opportunities for the young person to inform you about what they're seeing. And a chance to listen to them, and again, that doorway opens up so much if you can just take the time to listen to the young person and what they're really saying. Maybe there's something a little bit deeper in there that could be a stronger or better leverage point in which you could use to kind of get them back on track or make them feel good about education again.
That's great. I want to encourage folks to keep the questions coming because really this is about you and your needs and your questions, so we want to make sure we get to those. And actually, if you all have great suggestions for some of the questions that you've heard, type those in. We're all experts here. And so, Craig, you really opened the doorway to this next part that I want to get to, which is the listening piece. So what does it mean to really listen to young people, and what does that look like?
I think there are some major tenets, as I guess I'm going to call them, when it comes to really listening to young people. And I think the very first thing that we have to be able to do, well, actually, let me say this first, right? We live in this world where we are like literally surrounded by sound. We're inculcated with, everyone's walking around with their iPods and things plugged in at high volumes and whatnot. And the tool that you use to listen is your ears, right? So I'm going to ask everyone to first just recalibrate your ears. Find a quiet space, just 30 seconds, whatever, because there's nothing. I mean, I think it's really aggravating to talk to someone and they're just like, I can't hear what you're saying, because their hearing is kind of blown in so many ways, right? So recalibrate your ears first of all, right? I think another thing that you have to do when you're connecting with a young person is to be fully present. A young person or an old person, you have to be present. You can't be distracted by the technology that we have going on, cell phones, emails and things like that. You have to literally be there, giving your full attention. I think of the analogy of being in a room or being in a conversation with someone so intense, like the world around you, and like you don't even know it's just that connected. The other thing that I'm getting some audio here, but I'll keep talking. But the other thing is be able to receive the information. Receive the information as well as the emotional stuff. Is that coming across weird?
So yeah, so we're getting a little kind of choppy on our end from you. So we'll see if we can figure the technical issue out, because we definitely want to hear your responses. So why don't you keep talking, and we'll see if we figure it out on our end and can make it better. But
so receiving them along with the attendant emotion charge around it. I kind of want to acknowledge the information as emotional charge. And just then, ask questions if something isn't clear. I would ask questions. I guess at the end of the day, I would say listen as if you like to hear them. It's sometimes but sometimes it's for the person to be heard. One of the things that we learn through our work and raise our project was at the end of those sessions, young people were saying almost every session, heard. That someone listened to me, and I feel so much better now. Again, that direct impact, being able to see that in the moment was another part of the reason that I do the work. It sounds like it's fake. Okay, awesome. But yeah, and then I would say the other part of it too is because of the reason why I do this. I actually enjoy listening to people, and I make sure that that young person understands that this is not a burden. You know what I mean? Like, this is not just a job. This is like I am at my strongest here. My shoulders are broadest at this level here. That's speaking for me. But I think that if someone sees you enjoying doing something in service of something bigger, then I think those are some great tenets to kind of follow.
Well, that's great. So it's.
Oh, now we lost you.
So it's listen with your full body.
There you go. Yes.
Not just your ears. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask those critical questions. Do you think sometimes as adults we're afraid to ask those questions because we're afraid of what the answers might be?
Absolutely. And it also kind of knowing your audience. You know which questions you can ask that will kind of push the conversation along. You know which questions that might shut it down or go into that conversation cul-de-sac. You want to avoid those.
Right. So let me turn over to Javian, and I'd love to get your perspective on, as a young person, what is it like to really be heard by an adult? So what does that look like from your end, and what does it mean to you as a young person?
As a young person, a lot about respect. Older people are all about respecting other people. So I would like for someone listening to me to be respected. When someone's listening to me, I feel like my ideas are being not only heard, but it's going to be an action taken to actually get things across to them. So to me, it means someone's going to make my actions, my words into actions that can come true. And it's not all about whether or not they take in what I'm saying, as in the listening thing you guys were talking about, but it's meaning as in what are they going to do with what I'm saying with it. So that's a lot about what I feel.
So follow through on your part is big. So don't just listen to what you're saying, but make sure that you're acting on it if you're asking an adult to act on it. Okay, so a reminder, please give us your questions. We'd love to answer them. Let me go on to from listening to how do you really. This is all about relationships, right? So Javian talked a bit about that. Okay, don't just listen to me, but how are you going to follow through? How are you going to act on what I've said? So it's all about building really authentic relationships with young people. So how do you sustain those? Once you found the young person, made that connection, how do you sustain these for the long haul?
I think Javen just kind of set us up really great for that, because it is about taking action, and having a purpose-driven mission that's going to improve the quality of that young person's life. Is central to it all. You know what I mean? I think it's also important that as you move forward, you learn how to communicate. It's critical information as well as kind of growth. Information to the young person. Using feedback as a mechanism to help that young person grow, but also receiving the feedback to help you grow. Because again, the relationship is not just one way; it goes both ways. And I found that one thing that was really powerful for me when I first started doing work. A guy I was doing some work with by the same name, Craig, actually. He said to me one day, he's like, "Hey, Craig, you know what? I need your expertise on something." And I'm like 16 years old. Like, what can I be an expert on? But that really got me going. And since that day, we started doing work together. And again, it was a purpose-driven mission that was to serve as something bigger than me. But being able to kind of get behind a young person as they do that, like whatever it is, and you just support them, I think it's a great way to maintain a long-term relationship. And also, I think that as long as you are in a relationship with a young person, just like any relationship, you gotta where's it going? Set goals for the relationship. Set goals for the young person with the young person, not just this is what I want, this is what I want to do, but talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And I think that in those conversations, you'll find a richness that can keep the relationship going for a really long time.
Okay, so we've got a question from one of our viewers, and they want to know, how do you engage young people who were once passionate but have lost it?
I'm going to come back to the inspiring piece, the inspiration piece. I think that we can't say enough about that. Being able to find a young person that you're not obligated to, and that's not obligated to you. I think that speaks volume. It's a very powerful message to that young person. I see something in you, and that something that I see in you is very, very good, and I want to see it grow. I want to see you grow with that. Presenting the challenge. This is what we're going to try to do together, and then taking the action necessary to support that young person and getting to that to reach that challenge. I also feel that in a lot of ways, young people need to find a voice in expressing themselves. So the expression piece is really important. And the last thing I want to say about this is that I think a lot of times when we think about developing a relationship with a young person, it's like, I have to be everything to every young person for the rest of their life, for the rest of my life. And it's simply not the case. You can be kind of like the hub of a network for that young person and connect that young person to other people that can do the work that maybe you don't have the time to do, or the skills to do, or the understanding to do. You can be as important in a young person's life by connecting them with someone else that can be supportive of them as well. Does that answer the question?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that was a critical point that you made in terms of, one person doesn't have to be everything for that young person, and so having a community of folks rallying around young people, I think is key. So another question, we'll keep going with some of the audience questions. How many, this is a very good question here, how many young people can you reasonably have an authentic relationship with at a time?
It's kind of hard to quantify because it's it's a function of where you are, how many young people you can actually have access to, what occupies the 8 hours of your day when you're like most charged. Is it work? Is it your work with young people, or is it with papers and computers and things like that? I also think it's a matter of drive and passion. Not I don't want to say passion, but drive. Because in some cases a person may have their own family to get to with multiple kids, and that can be tiring. But I think reasonably take on what you feel will not knock you out of balance. For one person that might be one young person. For another young person that might be that young person and their two siblings. It's hard to quantify that, but I would say know your limits, and whatever doesn't take you out of balance is doable. I've heard of people that have work relationships with like 16 young people, and it's just kind of like, wow. But that person is also just burning themselves, burning the candle at both ends, and so you have to be able to take care of yourself in order to be able to serve others. But I would push that back onto the individual to know what your limits are, know what you can handle. In some cases, at times might be one young person that comes with a whole lot of stuff, so it's a situational thing. But knowing your limits, knowing what you're capable of doing without burning yourself out is a very important part of that, and keeping your life in balance. Because it's hard to help someone guide their life when your life is falling apart.
Definitely a good point. And Craig, would you think another indicator of perhaps stretching yourself a little too thin on this might be when you start to not follow through on your commitments? I would think that kind of consistency with a young person and making sure that you're following through with whatever you've committed to them is key to the relationship. So perhaps when you start, showing up later than you said, or having to cancel things or things like that, that might be a good indicator that things are a little out of balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of add to that, I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is, what happens if that relationship has to come to, like, it's got to change, and I think it's one of the most damaging things in the world to just kind of like, go to a kid when they're like, yep, okay, all right, we had a good run, see you later, and just kind of sever all ties at that point. I think that there's a way to go about doing it in a way where you maybe just saying, I need to pull back on my responsibilities a little bit, so that young person understands that it's not about, it's not like I don't like you, or anything like that, because that's how it gets read often. But it's just having a conversation about it so that it's transparent. I think is also very important when that relationship needs to kind of change gears.
In terms of,
there we go.
All right, sorry. In terms of kind of transitioning the relationship, I would also imagine that there are key points sort of in a young person's life. Perhaps you start a relationship with a young person, they're in middle school. Does the nature of that relationship change when they get to high school, when they go off to work or to college, and just sort of those key transition points? How do you help adults deal with changing the relationship that way?
It's a challenge, but just kind of looking at, again, I'm always coming back to like, what is the goal here? Like, where is this ship going? It's not like it always needs to be like a specific destination, but where are we going with this thing, with this relationship, with your life, and let that kind of be like the beacon. So when those transitions do come up, it's not as difficult. And again, I can't express enough how important it is to just be transparent and talk, and keep the lines of communication open. And it's that makes it a lot easier, I think.
So you've talked a few times about this idea of setting goals with the young people that you're connecting with and starting relationships with. And so what does that look like? Is it just is it a conversation? Is it a series of conversations? You know, how do adults kind of, you know, broach that subject for, you know, the goals of our relationship?
I think it's definitely ongoing conversation. And in doing that, I like to. I mean, personally, I like to look at, you know, first of all, what are we doing? Like, all right, I don't want to sound weird, but I look at the spiritual, the physical, the mental, and the emotional. And you know, like without getting too woo. The spirituality thing can be, you know, left behind. But a lot of young people that I work with have challenges with school in particular, so that becomes a very clear, very doable point of entry right there. Let's get you. You're not in school. Let's get you back in school. All right. Let's get you a high school diploma, GED, and let's get you on a track for college or a career. You choose, but that's kind of like where we're going. The second one is around. I mean, physical stuff. You can get into that with them, maybe not. But health is very important, and just kind of like surrounding yourself, being aware of the elements in your environment. So you know, you want to surround yourself with people that are doing things that you like and things that you want to be a part of. And then connecting people with that network, because I'm really important about relationships and connecting people. You know, and then the emotional piece. You know, it's often said, or I've often heard that, you know, we are emotional people who sometimes think, and we're not a thinking people who sometimes feel. And realizing that, you know, like emotional stuff is something that, again, it's one of those things like listening. We never really taught, at least I wasn't taught, of how to kind of deal with the stuff that I'm feeling, understanding why I'm feeling this, what it is that I'm bringing that's actually creating this situation that's now got me feeling like this. And you know, so the self-awareness piece, the awareness of what other people are feeling, the social, the awareness of what you're bringing to the situation, is also a very important thing to kind of learn and understand. So I said that's how I kind of start off setting the goals. I look at those 4 dimensions, realms, and then again, having a conversation with a young person and figuring out where you want to go in these directions.
So, Javion, I want to get back to you and ask you, you know, what has it meant to you to have Craig?
Sorry, Tanya, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, Javion, for you, I want to know, you know, what's it been like for you to have Craig in your life, and I'm sure other caring adults in your life helping, you know, support you and guide you. What has that meant to you so far?
I mean, it means a lot to me. So close and everything. Still talk and eat some. It's like we have like more old help me, because it's like I need people out there who show that they care and that they're willing to help me get further in life and do great things. Craig's not the only one that I still talk to from my youth job with him. It's like I talk to a lot of other people from there. It's like all about building connection that you can keep and that someone's really actually there for you. That's how you know, like, me and him had a connection during TE, because right now we're still talking. I came here to do this with him, and I'm very happy to be here.
So I want to give...
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. So I want to give our audience a last chance to get in a few questions while I lob kind of my final question out to Craig and Javion. So, you know, if you do want to get some questions in, type those in now. But I wonder, you know, for both of you, if you have some final words, piece of advice for the folks out here, you know, trying to do this work with youth, trying to engage young people, you know, trying to really amplify youth voice? You know, what would be your advice to them to continue this work, to do the work better?
Okay, I'll go first. Working with the youth is a great thing. When I had worked with TE, we did a lot of like events that brought in like a lot of people, even like people who were struggling there. A lot of parents came too. And now I work at a high school where it's like I serve lunches. I do a lot of odd jobs, so I'm still working in like the youth field. I think it's like so many youth need the help, but it's not so much out there that's being given to them. I know there's like community centers and stuff, but I think a lot of people need more personal help. It's not all about like community centers and where places they can go. And like when I worked at TE, we did like a lot of great things. In my neighborhood, we had built a park along with like Higher Ground and other foundations that were helping. And now when I walk past that park, I feel great about it because it's like it's going to be there 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And all the kids that are going to be so happy that we did such great thing, because I have lived there my whole life and we have never had a full park like that. So it's just a great opportunity to have that job and to just do great things for people that you know is going to help them.
And I guess the only 2 points that I would add is I think a lot of times when we think about doing this work, we think of it in like a formal setting, but there's so many informal opportunities where we can help shape and guide a young person, or even our peers even. You know, like just think when you walk down the street, some young person or person younger than you is looking up to you and they're learning from you. Something as simple as that, the way you interact with other people at the grocery store, at the car wash, or you know, wherever you're in public, those are opportunities to kind of be that model, so to speak, for a young person. And so I guess what I'm trying to say, it doesn't always have to be so formal and you know, like regimented. The other piece that I would add to this is a matter of timing. I think that a lot of times a person might go into it and be like, okay, I'm going to have this impact and I'm going to see it right away. And you do see something right away, but sometimes the ebb and flow of life kind of pulls you up and pulls you down, and just being aware that it's a process. It's something where, you know, that young person that you connect with is open arms one day and the next day they're, you know, giving you a stiff arm. You know, I would say, you know, try to work through that stuff. Don't put yourself in any harm's way or anything, obviously, but it's a journey. And life usually throws us some curveballs. So, you know, hang in there, and know that the timing is of the essence. You know, just don't give up after what you may perceive as a failed attempt to connect. You know, because you know what, sometimes it's just a matter of shaving away, chipping away, just little bit by little bit, and then you get to that kind of magical place where you actually do connect. And sometimes, quite honestly, young people are just like people. You know, they might just be testing you. So bring your eraser. And yeah, but I would say those are the two main things. You know, every opportunity in front of a young person is an opportunity to help shape, form, and direct and guide. And then timing. It's, you know, it's going to take some time.
Okay, so we have, I think, a couple questions from the audience. So one is, can you speak on youth leadership development and tips to run successful program? You know, a lot of our folks, you know, beyond sort of just amplifying youth voice and connecting with young people, really want to help them develop into young leaders. So any tips and good practice on that?
Oh man, the leadership stuff. You got something to say? Or yeah. It's again, it's one of those things where if we want to see young leaders develop, then we have to provide opportunities for young people to lead. Yeah. And in the work that I've done before, it was all about developing the leadership. You know, so young people like were front and center on everything, just making decisions, making the flyers, doing the outreach, taking care of the logistics, developing the content. We've got to pave that way for young people to be able to do that work with some guardrails around them to support their success. It's very important that element is added, because it's what kind of keeps them going. So again, it's assumed a lot that leaders are just kind of born and they can't grow. I push against that. I think that everyone is a leader. It's just a matter of, do they have the opportunities and the support they need to actually demonstrate that skill with the broader audience. But yeah, I feel like we have to give young people those opportunities to lead in order to see them develop as leaders.
And there was a question about balancing, and I'm going to ask my wonderful crew here to help me with this one question. It was about balancing a large number of youth volunteers and their responsibilities, and or pushing them away without pushing them away.
Sorry. I'm not sure if I understand.
So it's balancing. You're working with a large group of youth volunteers with lots of responsibilities, and so how do you? I think the question is around how do you balance sort of the leadership opportunity, but also not push them away.
You have any ideas?
I was thinking like in a way like he talks to like a lot of people who he works with, and like he still has connections with a lot of them. In a way, it's like all about that bond. How you talk about like when you first build something, it's gonna be held forever. So it's like once you start off, it's like getting them in to know that you're there for them and that you're going to help them in any way you can. So it's like even if it's a lot of people, it's a special bond with a different person. So it's like building that bond that you have. Everyone's bond is different. So.
And I would. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I was just going to add that being clear about what the expectations are for the volunteers, and like I can't speak enough about being all on the same page, and being very specific about what the role is, and then you can divide those roles up over time. So for example, having like a holiday event where you're giving away toys and you got 20 young people that are interested in helping with that. Well, some of those can work in the first end of this, some of this can work in the second end, some can take the middle shift, some people can, you know what, we need help over here with the food. Do you mind doing that? Or we need help with getting people through the doors. I mean, there's a lot of very specific things that people can do to contribute to the success of an event and to kind of balance the purpose and substance with getting the people through the doors. And I think it's just a matter of being really clear about that vision at the beginning.
And I think that question speaks to sort of that notion of when we're working with young people and particularly giving them youth leadership opportunities, they always rise to the occasion. And so then we've got to be ready as the adult leaders to add, more responsibility. We've got to be able to keep up with the young people. So I think we need to plan for that, as well, as part of our programs. Before we end our Google Hangout, any last question or two that the audience wants to throw out there? I see some writing going on, so it looks like we've got another question.
Tanya, while we have a second here, I would like to mention that there are other tools that that I use to kind of do this work. I didn't want to get into the weeds about that though, because we could be talking forever, as JB pointed out earlier. But if people are interested, they could reach out to us and we could have further conversations offline to help and support other programs out there.
That's great, Craig. So, question that we just got in: most effective ways to teach 14 to 24-year-olds soft skills.
That's what everyone's talking about these days, right? The soft skills. So for me, that falls into that whole emotional realm of things, and it's a tricky thing, because when we talk about getting along with other people, and we talk about being able to kind of navigate the challenges and opportunities that are presented to us in work situations, it takes a lot for us to kind of know what's going on with us, right? But I would say feedback is one great tool to use to help young people with that, help develop the softer skills. I would say another thing is there are a lot of interactive exercises that can be used to kind of just surface it so that people can then talk about it, because I think the talking about it is really important. But I think it's one of those things that you kind of just do. It's kind of like the byproduct, so to speak. Like, you gotta have the purpose. You're working towards that purpose, and along the way, you provide these guide rails and guards to just kind of let anybody really know of what's really happening there. And I think that pulling someone, being aware of your timing, and pulling someone aside and saying, hey, just stating an observation. I noticed this. Then maybe talking about this is the impact that it had. And then going into kind of, what do you see from your side, and how can we work together to kind of ratify this, whatever, or deal with this behavior, But I think that that's kind of like a great way to kind of open up the conversation, just broad observation, impact of that observation, and then what do you see on your side, and then let's try to figure out how to fix this, because we don't want that impact anymore. Like, it's not good for us, it's not good for the organization, it's not good for the product or service that we're presenting to the world.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Javion, for joining us today. Thank you, audience, for participating and being really interested in this topic. We want to apologize for any of the technical difficulties we had and some of the sound issues. But what we want is your feedback on this. What can we do better? What other elements of this particular issue would you like to explore? What other topics might you be interested in? Let us know. We'll do many more of these Google Hangouts, and we want to make sure that they address the issues and topics that you are interested in. Make sure that you share some of the good work that you're doing on gradnation.org. We'd love to hear about your stories and your strategies and tools that you're using with young people. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading upside down from my producer. And we will, for all the folks who RSVP'd and signed up for this, we'll send you a survey. So please respond to that, and that really will help us plan for future Google Hangouts. So thank you to everyone, and we will see you on our next Hangout.
Thanks, Fanny.